A mystery unpacked. This is Wretched Radio. When you hear about somebody who cuts their own body, most likely it is a mystery to you, entirely perplexing. Why would somebody who loves themselves, and we all do, don't we, want to hurt themselves? To help us unpack the mystery from rickthomas.net is Rick Thomas himself. Please visit his website. You do have articles there on cutting, rickthomas.net. You've got articles on suicide, depression, anxiety, anger, bipolar, sexual issues, pretty much the whole deal. In my estimation, rickthomas.net, you will see, I think, the most practical application of theology to life. That is your sweet spot. I don't know if anybody's ever told you that, but I just did.
Well,
okay.
Yeah,
just say
good.
you're welcome.
You're
Say you're welcome.
Thank you.
Okay. rickthomas.net. You will benefit much from reading on whatever subject is of interest to you. Can't encourage it enough. Let's talk about cutting. People using a sharp object, a razor blade, I presume, to their arms, their legs, maybe to hide it, maybe to show it. What is going on in that heart?
They're hurting. Sometimes we talked about the mimicking behavior, that they're just mimicking something. It's just a faddish solution to what everybody's looking for, how to feel better about themselves. Sometimes it's just a person that's wanting to feel something.
Yeah,
they're just numb.
That just makes my head kind of go, what? I don't understand. Feeling pain is better than feeling nothing?
Yes. Okay. They're feeling something.
Because they're just a flat emotional state?
Yeah, the Bible talks about today in Hebrews 3:7, Hebrews 4:7, today, if you hear his voice, do not harden your heart. We can become so dull or so hardened by life, by choices that we make. There's a lot of reasons for it, that you just want to feel something. And sometimes cutting is an illogical solution.
But at least it's feeling something. Now, when somebody is hurting that much or that flat with their emotions, does the razor, it hurts, but it hurts. It's pain, correct?
It does hurt, and they can start small, and then they can continue to do it.
All right, but it's not like somehow the wiring is such that it's like, ooh, that's just delightful. It actually hurts. But that option is better than nothing at all.
Yeah, and part of it is that. Part of it also can be self-atonement, that they don't have any way of paying for their sins. And so this is a penance for some people that I don't know how to get out of, the guilt that I feel, whether that guilt is legitimate or is imposed upon them by someone else, that they don't know how to escape from it. And so sometimes you're talking about penance, where there is some form of self-atonement.
Now that could be as always, these could be mingled together.
Right.
There's more than one reason, but that could be a reason. Another reason that somebody gets to the point where they just aren't feeling anything. How does somebody get there?
The way that it's progression of sin. You could look at cutting like any other sin. When a person he's dissatisfied with his relationship with his wife, and then he begins to look over the fence at another person, and then he begins to justify what he did. This is the dulling effect of the conscience. And then after a while, now he's in pornography, or now he's in adultery. And so it's the progression of sin. You don't wake up in the morning, and nobody does that I'm going to cut myself this morning. But through a progression of hopelessness and horrific things that happen, and they try solutions and they don't find them, and then they get to I just want to try this. And so it's always a progression, an unbiblical, godless progression that gets worse and worse. And we talked earlier to where ultimately, it's the progression to suicide. It could go that far.
All right, so this is just a step along the path.
Right.
Now, do we have any historical record of cutting, or is this a recent phenomenon because of social media?
No, it's been going on for a long time. I haven't studied cutting, and I couldn't give you historical facts, but it's not new. This is what I was saying earlier. It's been popularized.
Right.
Popularized because social media, we're much closer now, and of course we have more data now than we've ever had before, and so it seems like it's pandemic, and I would say that it's more than it used to be, but this is not a new thing.
Okay, so social media has helped it, but it didn't create it.
No.
I can't help but think, though, on social media, and it's not just the YouTube machine, talking to friends, Instagramming, and, I tried this, it felt good, it helped, temporarily, it does appear to help, and it just gets popularized, and more people are doing it. All right, does it help?
Social media?
No, cutting.
Cutting does not.
Well, the people do it repeatedly. It must do something for them, at least temporarily.
Well, yeah, like drugs or alcohol or cutting, whatever cistern that we carve out as a solution that's not God's answer. Yeah, you can. What we're talking about relief versus change. And non-biblical means can give you relief, but it will never satisfy the discontentment of the heart, as Augustine said. And so, yes, when you say help, in the moment,
it gives some relief.
Momentary relief, but there's a difference between relief and repentance, which is a total life change.
Now, just so that nobody understands, Rick Thomas of rickthomas.net, when somebody walks into your biblical counseling office and they're doing this, perhaps you can see the scars, or it's July and they've got long sleeves on and you sense something is up. From the time that they walk in and they are currently actively cutting themselves to a time when their thinking is progressively changed by God, and they start to understand what true hope is. They find their satisfaction in the only one who satisfies. I know you don't have a chart for this, but does that take 2 or 3 days to fix the problem?
No.
What are we talking about here?
Well, there's 3 ways that you stop sinning.
Okay, hold on. But first thing is I want to establish how long. This is not a quick fix.
Yeah. Well, one, amputation in Matthew 5.
You're not going to give it. You're just going to borrow. You're just going to go ahead and do it anyway, aren't you?
In Matthew 5:30, and so I would want to talk to them about cutting that off. No pun intended at all. I don't mean that at all here, but we got to stop this. But that's a behavioral modification thing in Matthew 5:30. And so now there's a mortification issue, and that's Romans 8:13, to make dead the things, the body. And that's going to take a long time. And so we're talking months to walk. So you want to stop the crisis, amputation. Now, if they are willing to do that, or they're not going to continue to cut themselves and be accountable to that, then you can move on to the process of dealing with the heart issues that are actually causing the cutting. And so stop it, and then let's start working on the problem. That would be ideal. But 6 months would be, you don't want to set artificial timelines because each person is different, but a solid 6 months of care. But then you also want them to be in a context where they can receive ongoing care for the rest of their lives, which would be the local church, receiving that care in the local church.
Yeah, but the point being, and again, an artificial timeline isn't helpful at all. Just wanted to establish this biblical counseling doesn't mean, you come in,
no.
You give them the correct Bible verse, and then everything is fine. It is far more complex than that, because we're dealing with histories, we're dealing with hurts and wounds, and we're dealing with the effect of the fall, we're dealing with sin, we're dealing with regeneration. So it's a long ride that we go on with somebody.
Yeah, until we meet Jesus. Yep.
Right, but even then, the sanctification process is ongoing, and it takes some time. All right, so the issue of cutting is a step in the progression on the road to suicide. So if I know somebody who's cutting, what do I do? Because it seems like that could be pretty dire at that moment.
Well, depending on the relationship that I have with the person, you want and the age of the person, parents, and there's a lot of dynamics that's in play. So I want to get to know the person that I'm talking to, and then you begin to sculpt out a plan accordingly.
Right, but I want to make sure that they don't do anything to hurt themselves,
right,
in a lasting sort of manner. Visit Rick Thomas of rickthomas.net. Much of this, it is unpacked even more. You've also got counselors at rickthomas.net that can help people one-on-one, because it does, many times it requires, reading articles is nice. A human relationship is better, but even beyond that, better, in your estimation, would be discipling in the context of a local church.
Yeah, and that is the progression for a lot of folks that come to us. They don't want to talk to someone face to face, and so what they do is they read our resources privately, and then as they receive, as God works in their lives, and then they come to us, and then we have a conversation. We could call that biblical counseling. And then from that point, we want to get them inside a local church where they can receive ongoing care. And so there is a progression there. But you could come to our website and more or less feed yourself and find some help, and then you could start talking to us, and that would be the next step, and I would recommend that.
rickthomas.net, and there shouldn't be any shame. We've all got issues, some of us more than others. Nevertheless, Rick Thomas of rickthomas.net. This is Wretched Radio.
Would you please like, subscribe, or share this video so other people can enjoy this professional Christian content?